thing without you guys. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Because right now we don't have to let people in. They're going to jump right in, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. There used to be a number so I could see how many.
I wanted to listen to something.
Mark, it says 15 at the top of my little list.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
We got most of the usual suspects here. Hey, Ron.
Is she in the picture? No, yeah.
Mm-mm. No,
No.
uh,
You don't be shy.
Sure.
So you can look at it.
Yeah.
Jesus, how do I get out of this?
She'd probably have to move like to the end this year.
So I'll put it back. Okay.
Yep.
Do you guys want me to?
Yeah.
No, no, we're putting a lot of pressure on you. We're just excited that somebody showed up in person.
Yeah. Wait.
Chris? Archie?
Where was that chair? I'm trying to see the visualize. Where would you have the move? See what happened?
Chris? Can that thing zoom in on you?
Kristen, we can hear you and Mark.
Thanks, Martha.
And I can't seem to get on the video without downloading Teams, and I don't want to download it onto my computer.
It should work on your web browser. You should be able to sign on as a guest without using the app.
I did, but it won't let me turn on the camera. It's saying video isn't supported in your browser yet. And if I still want to go face to face, I have to download Teams, and I don't want to do that.
Okay. The next time we get together, I'll play with it on your computer. It might just be a setting in your browser.
I'll go download it now.
Okay. Good morning. Aloha, everyone. Glad to see you folks here digitally at September 22nd, Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission monthly meeting. Appreciate you all being here. We've probably got a busy schedule and a lot to share with you on as we begin to learn that every meeting with our new oversight coordinator is going to be a lot of information, a lot of things done. She's been all over the place, and so we're excited to for you folks to hear her report. But this is like our third meeting here, coming back to physical, post-pandemic. If it's safe to say that, but I'm so excited this morning. I want to introduce you guys to Cammie. She's our first live person in the audience since we came back to being live as a commission. I'm so happy, and I want to encourage all of you to come because she got on the bus this morning from Laie to attend our meeting, all the way from the North Shore. She's a political major at BYU, and she's going to come here, and she doesn't know it yet, but she's going to be volunteering for a lot of stuff with the commission. Bright minds, and she doesn't know she's going to be meeting a lot of important people in Hawaii to help her through her educational process. So, Cammie, thank you for being here today, and for the beautiful bus ride that you had down the Ko'olau. Okay, everyone, let's. I recognize Judge Town is present. Judge Ibarra's present. Martha, can you verbalize for us?
I am present because again, I have to download the thing to even enter my name. I can't believe it.
It's okay. We'll continue to work it as long as we can hear you. And been informed that Commissioner Sakai will be a little late this morning, but he is coming. Yeah. So with no further ado, we can begin our meeting. Again, good to see everyone. My fellow commissioners, Kristen just sent you, should have sent you folks copies of the minutes for the August 18th, 2022 minutes. If you go, folks could take a look at it. It is posted on the website as well. If you have any questions or not, I'll take a motion to accept those minutes into report record. Any questions or concern for Mike, Ron, or Martha?
Haven't even gotten to them yet. I just,
Okay, I tell you what we'll do. We'll suspend this particular agenda item right now to later on so that you folks can review it as we move forward. We're in the process, ladies and gentlemen, of solidifying our processes in terms of our minutes, posting things on the site, and getting our information to the commissioners in a timely manner. So go ahead, review those things, and we'll come back to them. What we'll do at this time, for those of you who are present, and please raise your hand so we can identify you, and then keep your comments, if possible, to less than 3 minutes. We will take public testimony on the agenda items as presented on this morning's agenda. Anyone? Go ahead, Kat.
Good morning. Oh, am I muted? Can
No,
you
we
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know. I don't understand this screen as well as the other one. Anyway, I'm really happy that aloha and thank you so much for all your work. And I hope you guys had a great trip. I'm really happy to see parole on the agenda. I'm working on a case now with a guy who's been in like 20 months, no write-ups, no anything. And he just keeps being denied parole. And he's in on a violation. This is crazy. We're spending like $240 a day to keep this guy in who has kids who need him, who has a job waiting for him. And yet they keep making these decisions like everybody's Charles Manson. So that's all I want to say, but thank you so much for putting it on the agenda.
Thank you, Kat. Anyone else? You can raise your hand digitally so we can identify you.
I see Carrie Ann
Noel
on there.
raised her
Noel?
hand.
Go ahead, Noel.
I'm Noelle Rodriguez. I'm on the Big Island, and HCCC is our backyard, and our one of our friends who works for us is right now at HCCC, and I'm looking forward to interviewing him closely about his experience when he gets out in a couple of weeks. Oh, and should I introduce myself? I
I worked at California Institute for Women at Chino, and I did a study of the women at OCCC when it was women years ago with Meta Lind. And so I'm very concerned about prison conditions, and I'm finally now retired. So I have some time. And I'm 78.
Oh, wow.
Well, nice to meet you, Noel. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for bringing up your concerns and your work in Hawaii. We'll have continuing conversations with
Okay.
you and the commission. Thank you.
Carrie Ann.
Carrie Ann?
Aloha, good morning. Carrie Ann Chirota on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and going in and traveling from place to place. It's critically important. I would like to comment on two particular items on the agenda, one which is parole violators and also proposed policy actions from the Commission. They actually are interconnected. I think if we're looking at systems, which is what we're tasked to do, is the ways in which we can decarcerate at every single entry point into the correctional system. So that starts even before Department of Public Safety. I think having these other stakeholders involved and at times calling them and being accountable for what they say they're doing compared to what they're doing. On the front end of the system, I hope that the Commission will continue to support bail reform. As you know, there was a criminal pretrial task force. There were 20 plus recommendations. If you actually look at every single recommendation, almost none have been implemented. And the one that was enacted into law, unsecured bail, is discretionary. It says courts may use unsecured bail, and none of the courts have done so to date. And so again, what we say that the judiciary supports, but what's actually being done in practice, there's a stark difference. And I think that having the stakeholders here to explain the actions that they are taking or not taking and how it contributes to mass incarceration, they need to be held accountable as well. The other thing that we would like the Commission to consider in terms of reducing the population in addition to bail reform, of course, is diversion. Diversion programs, the legislature passed some laws and has appropriated some funding. I think that some providers are still waiting to get that funding, and that's always been a challenge from year to year, is the actual release of funding appropriated by lawmakers. And with regard to probation and parole, this is an area that fuels mass incarceration. And if we look at the data in Hawaii, the number of people who are revoked on probation and the number of people who are revoked on parole for technical violation, not because of convictions, is extremely high. It is an area that we make significant changes in the rules, the statute, that we can actually decrease the number of people who are back in on probation and parole violations. And I would like to highlight for all of you that with probation, the Pew study did a report a few years ago. Hawaii has the longest rates of probation compared to any other jurisdiction in the United States, the average being 59 months. That is a problem, and we can reverse that. And so I'm hoping the Commission will support those bills moving forward into the next session. And then lastly, relating to parole, similarly, if you look at the data in their statistical annual report 2 years ago, 100% of all people who were revoked on parole, according to their data, it was for technical violations. That has been an issue. Why do we have so many people literally shipped out of state for parole violations when people could be at Waiava and getting and transitioning back into the community? So if we reduce that population and not reincarcerate people primarily for substance use, we can look at it from a health lens, and we can make a difference in decreasing the population and not having it be a death sentence for some people. Lastly, just I think to personalize it, we all probably read the story in Civil Beat yesterday about the man who, Mr. Grace Vance, was killed at OCCC. It says in that article that he was back in on a parole violation. And while I do not know the specifics of his case, I would venture a guess that it was probably a technical violation. So a technical violation that led him better served by the community resulted in his violent death. And that is something that's preventable. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. Want to recognize Commissioner Sakai's presence in the meeting at this time. Morning, Ted.
Hi, good morning.
Can anybody else wish to make some comments on the agenda? Okay, thank you so much for those concerns that was raised, and hopefully some of the answers will come out or set us on a path to find those answers for you that was discussed. We're moving to item number 5 at this time, which is the Oversight Coordinator Report. Kristen?
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Johnson. I am the Oversight Coordinator. This month, we have quite a bit to cover, so bear with me while I go through it. But it is a requirement of Act 179 that I put together a monthly report. There are actually 2 reports that came out this month, and so my normal report, which will be posted today, and then also a report that was specific to HCCC. If you haven't seen that report, I would highly recommend pulling it up. It is on our website. But that's going to cover some initial impressions that Commissioner Ted Sakai and I had after touring. So to get into it, actions taken, I'll start with budgeting. I did finalize and submit the biennium expenditure, so fingers crossed that that gets approved and that we're set there. For facility tours, I have officially completed touring all facilities, including Saguaro on the mainland. I went to Kalani on August 25th, HCCC on August 25th, Maui on August 29th, Saguaro on September 8th and September 9th. And then I also have completed additional tours to HCCC on August 31st and September 21st. I do want to thank Tommy Johnson for being just extremely responsive, not only with all of these tours, but any follow-up questions or any issues that I had. He has been extremely responsive to me, and I truly, truly appreciate it. I think ultimately I can't do my job without the Department of Public Safety, and so I really appreciate Max Otani, Tommy Johnson, Mick Hoffman, everybody from the facilities who has just been fantastic in answering all my questions. So I'm going to briefly cover some initial impressions of the facilities that I've gone to. The initial impressions that cover OCCC, Halava, Waiava, the women's facility, those are all outlined in the August Oversight Coordinator Report. And so if you haven't got a chance to take a look at that, that is up on the website. But for Kalani, it was a rehabilitative environment with cabin-like housing units. So I really enjoyed seeing that. But at the same time, there was a serious lack of bed utilization in the space. I think maybe, I should have noted this, but I think maybe a third to a half of the beds were empty. So it would be great to see more beds filled in that space.
Kristen,
Oh, go ahead.
Kristen, the population at Kulani was 85 on the day we were there, and the capacity is 200.
200.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate that, Ted. The other thing that we noticed was that programming and correctional industry spaces are not being utilized. They had a massive wood shop where apparently they used to have people in custody build furniture and all sorts of different things. None of that is being utilized. They had a massive sewing shop where at one point they're actually sewing masks for people in custody and the community. That's not being utilized. And then also a large laundry space, which is not being utilized. But I did learn that the laundry space isn't being utilized because of a lack of water that is available to Kalani. So I did want to note that. HCCC, I'm going to cover that a little later in this report, my initial impressions. I'm going to move to Maui. Maui, my initial impressions were that they were using the COVID containers inappropriately. They're using them for permanent housing for the women there. That's not what these were meant for. These housing units, they're really not even housing units, honestly. It's a
trailer.
Yep.
it's a temporary housing unit meant for people who are exposed to COVID or who have COVID. And so that's what it was meant for. It's a storage-like structure with 4 cells inside. And luckily, it didn't appear that Maui was overcrowding these spaces. But having the women in there specifically, I did have some concerns about that. The other thing I noticed about Maui is that there are evident staff shortages. I have been noticing that across every facility, and there was a pretty serious lack of movement within the facility. Saguaro, we will touch on that a little bit later on the agenda, but one of the things I do want to note is that it really highlighted the benefit of having a newer facility. Saguaro was built in 2009, and they focused on strategic movement and rehabilitation. It was clean, organized, spacious. They had fresh paint, lots of Hawaii murals, which was good to see. But on the flip side, that also emphasized the reality that people in custody would prefer to be 3,000 miles away from their friends, family, and community versus being in the facilities that are here in Hawaii. So pros and cons on that one, I guess. So throughout all of these tours, I did put together a few different notes about things that I think are happening across the board. And so one of them is evidence staffing shortages. There are mandatory overtime. So officers are working 16 to 24-hour shifts, which definitely affects officer safety and also the safety of people in custody. This also limits out of cell time for people in custody. When you have extreme staffing shortages, you don't have the manpower, for lack of better words, you need in order to escort people to these different programs, to recreation. The list goes on. Serious overcrowding. Much of the overcrowding, I think, are contributing to inhumane conditions. So I'm very concerned about that. And then also classification concerns. During the last meeting, Commissioner Sakai had noted that nearly 80% of people in custody are in secure settings. The average rate across the country is 40 to 50%. And so I think there's a potential issue of just overclassifying people and keeping them in really, really restrictive housing. So cell type housing instead of dorms or, spaces where people can kind of move around freely. So the Department of Public Safety is aware, obviously, of all these different issues, and we've been trying to work together to figure out a plan moving forward. I believe Tommy Johnson is on this meeting, and we can, talk more about this later. But next, I want to shift into HCCC.
Are you moving down the agenda now? Because
No.
HCCC is item number 8.
No, I have HCCC updates in my coordinator report, but what we can do is switch back to the agenda item, and then I can talk about the condition updates after we talk about HCCC as a whole. That's a good point. I think the only other thing in my coordinator report is to briefly talk about NACOL, which is also in the agenda, so we'll wait on that. And general office updates. I'm very excited about this, everyone. We have an official address. I'm so excited. So all of this will be posted online. I'm also going to be working with the Department of Public Safety to get this information posted in the facilities. But our mailing address is 235 South Baratania Street. I'm also working with the Department of Public Safety to make sure that our mail is privileged, which means that people in the department, like staff, they can't open or go through the mail. Anything coming into me would be classified. Anything going out to people in custody would be classified. We also have an official website. I'm so excited. And it's hdsoc.hawaii.gov. It isn't quite launched right now. We have the domain. I'm adding all the information on there that we need to make it useful, but it's coming. So keep an eye out for that. I'd say in the next week or two, we'll get that up and launch. We also have an official email hcsoc@hawaii.gov. So that way, we can have things shared amongst staff who will hopefully be hired soon. And we also have social media now. We have a LinkedIn, a Facebook account, and also a YouTube account. So all of our videos will be uploaded on YouTube. I'm going to add all of the different chapters on YouTube so you can skip through to the different agenda items. You can tell I'm very excited about this. I tend to be a very type A organized person. And so this is really, really going to help with that. And then it's also going to help with being able to let you all know when we have new things posted. You can follow us. Other than that, we have expenses for the preceding month. I'll be honest with you that most of the expenses actually haven't been posted yet. And so the expenses I have listed are the same as the August report, just because it's a little bit behind in pulling out of our specific appropriation out of the AG's office. And our next meeting will be October 20th. So that is it for the Oversight Coordinator report, and we can jump back into the agenda.
That's good. Again, the Oversight Coordinator's report should be posted on our website. Should you want to review, or you have not yet have a chance to review it, it's there for your perusal. So thank you.
No problem.
Mark, I just want to make a comment.
Go ahead.
That in our statute, it says the oversight coordinator shall be required to maintain confidentiality in all respect to all matters that identifies and the identities of complainants. So the issue of having privileged mail really is in our legislation. So it's not a choice by anybody. It has to be privileged.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, so in addition to posting, now that we have these meetings and we have the oversight coordinator who's required to produce monthly reports for us, those reports are also sent to the governor's office and the entities that have chosen the commissioners. House Speaker, Senate President, Chief Justice, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Yeah, so we're very happy that we are on the path of consistency in producing these reports from the commission and keeping the executive branch and others aware of what's going on. So thank you. Moving on to item 6 on our more report on the Saguaro Correctional Center and our visit. That was the first time that I visited Saguaro. I visited any of the facilities in my capacity on the commission as well. I have seen other locations that the state has held our men throughout the state and women in regards to when they were in Kentucky, Oklahoma, Minnesota, and Mississippi. Yeah, and so along the lines that Core Civic, or at that time Correctional America.
Corrections Corporation.
Correctional Corporation of America. A lot of their ability to do what they do is in the way they design their facilities. Yeah. So having worked in Halawa and OCCC and the Women's Community Correctional Center, and knowing that Halawa is the baby of those 3 facilities, which was built in 1985 or 86. When you walk into something more modern, everything is based on what current correctional methodologies are, and so they adjust the structures to make housing offenders a little bit easier. So with that being said, it was very impressive to see it on such a large scale. Where the men are housed, part of a larger compound where other facilities with other states, including Arizona, are being housed. So it's a big complex in the middle of the desert. Really go down, and we really looked at the operations of the facility in terms of their kitchen, their laundry, their commissaries, and how they manage the infrastructure of the facility in terms of security, camera systems. And we also went into the housing units. We wanted to specifically look at where a lot of our concerns from the community have been coming from in terms of the segregation units and the the ship program. Yeah. And so we had a lot of contact and walked through those housing units and spoke with a lot of the men and their concerns, which we have been following up with. And then on the regular population, and these are things I didn't know, they did have a particular housing units that were designed for veterans, the military. It did have that same unit, or also had a canine program for recovery of greyhounds. Yeah, so the dogs were actually in the unit with the offenders. I've never really seen that, so I was kind of impressed with the fact that you've seen muzzled canines walking around the unit with their handlers. And the most impressive thing was a Braille class. Yeah, they were transcribing books into Braille. Yeah, it's a really high level type of program, and they're really looking at how they can incorporate these individuals in transition and bring that knowledge back to Hawaii. And well, some of them are actually working on children's books on cultural matters. Yeah, Hawaiian issues. So I really appreciate the fact that they were even trying to figure out how to write Braille, interpret Hawaiian words. You know, so that was an impressive program as well. That's kind of we're still evaluating and assessing a lot of what we saw, but we want to be strategic in how we reply to some of our concerns because we want to solve system problems overall and not just putting out fires. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment about the mainland facility?
Yes.
We can all compliment the wonderful job the Corrections Corporation of America, or now Civic Corps, does. Doesn't change to me the basic policy. We should not be sending inmates out of state. These people on the mainland are able to provide the services they do because they're required by contract to do that. When we had our inmates in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota had their own guidelines as to how correctional facilities had to run, and they were even more expansive than was our contract. They had to provide more things than just Hawaii's contract had to provide. So while we can keep on complimenting the wonderful job they're doing up there, number one, they're under contract. Number one, they're a private facility. I do not like private corrections. I think it inherently is a public responsibility, and our inmates should be home. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
I think that's a really fair point. And honestly, that was something that Mark and I had talked about quite a bit after the tour because it was mixed feelings, right? It was like you see these great programs and you see, the bright colors and the fresh paint, and you're like, wow, like this is, if you have to have a correctional facility, this is kind of the ideal. But on the flip side, you're right, Martha, I agree with you that, when you're dealing with human beings, I don't think that privatization belongs in that. And so I do agree. But at the same time, it was comforting that if this is a direction that, well, not a direction that we're going to go in, but if this is the way that things are right now, at least the conditions there were better than what we were expecting.
We have
I also want to remind you that Core Civic was not releasing information about COVID. They said they weren't required to do that. I really object to that.
Yep.
So
that's it.
I'll just reiterate real quick, and thank you, Martha. Your concerns is everyone's concern at this particular point in time. But right now, we have a lot to do in Hawaii. We have a lot to do in Hawaii, and we want to just understand. And what I just told to you right now, Core Civic, we will always deal with the issues that are coming out of them in Saguaro. But in terms of programming and housing and what they're doing, it's sufficient enough while they're there so we can focus on changing the system here in Hawaii for the eventual return of our population. Yeah. Go ahead. That's it? Okay, that was item number 6. Any more questions from the commissioners? Okay, item number.
Mark is dead.
Okay, Ted.
Yeah, I'm very troubled by all of this. acknowledging, I'm not surprised at what you folks found out in Saguaro. The program, the Core Civic makes it a point to assure that all of its facilities are accredited under the American Correctional Association standards. I believe we wrote in the ACA standards in our contract with Core Civic. So like Martha said, they are required by contract to do these things. So they cannot overcrowd, for example. They have to provide a certain level of activity. But this really begs the question, how come they can do it and we can't?
Yeah.
For example, we used to do Braille translations at Halava back in the 90s and the early 2000s. You know, why did we stop doing that? Why was it that when Kristen and I went to the Halava Education Centers, you know, with almost 1,000 inmates in the facility, there were like 20 inmates in the center and virtually nobody in correctional industries. Why was it that when we went to Waiava, what used to be one of our crown jewel programs, the cash box program, we built a 200-bed unit for cash box. Why is it that they had only 16 substance abusers in the program on that day? I mean, these are very serious questions that call into question. We need not only to look at classification issues, but the whole process of how, what I call a correctional process, what kind of intake assessments we do, how we classify inmates, what kind of programming decisions we make, what kind of facility assignments we make, how people qualify for parole, how they get ready for parole, what happens to them when they're on parole, what's in the community to assure that they can be successful parolees, and how do we, in the correctional facilities, prepare them to become successful parolees. You know, I'm bothered by, I think it was about a year ago when we had the chair of the paroling authority talk about the large number of chairs to set, which means, yeah, he's eligible for parole, but there's no place to go. Why? How does this happen in our correction? Why aren't we preparing inmates so when they hit the parole board, they have a place to live, they have a job, they have a means of support, et cetera, et cetera? You know, these are serious questions that I think if we don't address them, our system is going to forever be like it is today.
Yeah.
So I'll get off my soapbox. There's some other areas I think we need to address. The facilities are very much deteriorated. It's been 8 years since I last went into the facilities, and you can see the age. They need to be replaced, but they need to be replaced wisely. We can't just build a dorm and say we added beds. We have to look at who should be in there and how do we properly accommodate the detainees and the people who are committed to our facilities. In other words, is corrections going to be, for example, the final repository for all the homeless and mentally ill and substance abusers that we don't know what to do with in the community? Just lock them up. So these are serious questions I think the community has to ask. And as one of the leaders in the community, this commission really has to start looking at these issues.
Thank you, Ted.
That's my rant.
You know, commissioners, there's a lot that I shared with the debrief with the Core Civic when we on our last day, and that's why I said what I said in terms of we're still assessing, evaluating. But both what Martha and Ted said is truly things that need to be done. They want to go so in depth in it, but there are things that I saw that I wasn't happy with that you folks had just mentioned, and it's a matter of figuring out how's the best way to present it. We anticipate a strategic plan from Christian within the next 2 months. Yeah, and some of the things, if not all of the things that Ted and Martha just spoke about, will be part of the strategic plan and how we attack those things. So we're going to look forward to that so we can have the more deeper conversations. But it is in the planning at this particular point in time. So thank you. Okay, we'll move on.
Mark, I'm sorry for this, but I had one question on your visit to Arizona. Did you folks have a chance to talk to the contract monitor? And if so, how did that conversation go?
That's a good question. Yes, we did. We met with her separately. And before we met with her, I actually had pulled her job description, and what's required of her, because I wanted a better understanding of what her job is in the first place. We did have a good conversation. I think what we learned was that her role is to really, really focus on the contract itself and ensuring that the facility is following the contract. And so she does a lot of that by attending disciplinary meetings, looking at cameras, looking at reports, looking at logbooks, all of that kind of like background stuff. So she doesn't appear to tour the unit as often as what we thought she would. What do you think?
I think many of the misconceptions expressed to us, many of the things that was expressed to us by the offenders that we spoke to at the facility was their unhappiness with her because their belief that she was a social worker
or like a grievance coordinator.
or a grievance coordinator, which is not her role. Her role is to see, and I'm hesitate because I want to make sure I'm saying this right, and Kristen's going to correct me. Her role is to make sure that the process are adhered to, according to the contract, and to help things move through. She sees there are snags in the processes, So it's really beginning to try to understand how her role is viewed, and then how we view her role and how public safety review her role. And that's part of what we're trying to assess with public safety so that we can improve the communication with the offenders and the families and everyone on what she actually does. But for right now, the understanding was she looks at the contracts. If you look at all the reports she submits, it's really all standards.
Yeah. It's more of like a checklist standard. I think that and I think this is important to talk about. I think that there are multiple ways to monitor a facility and monitor standards, right? And what I wanted to be hesitant about is telling her how she should do her job. I do my job very differently. I talk to anybody and everybody who will talk to me, right? I think it's important for the people who are living and working in these facilities to hear from them directly because they're the people who know the best, in my opinion. So that's how I navigate my role. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how she needs to navigate her role. And her whole role is also different than mine, right? But I think that the bigger issue was that there was a total disconnect in what people thought her job should be and what her job actually is. And so what we talked to her about was just communicating that more and making it very clear. Because the other piece too, keep in mind that when I'm touring and when I'm talking to people in custody, they bring up a lot of issues to me. And I'm very straightforward that, listen, I'm not even in a place right now where I can take on individual complaints. Right? I'm just not. I don't have a case management system. I don't have investigators. But I still want to hear it. And so I talk to them, but I let them know from the beginning, hey, just so you know, this is more informational for me. This is not going to be specifically action-based unless it's an emergency or something a little bit different like that. And so I make that communication very clear. And I think that would be helpful for her if she were to do the same thing. So we did talk about that, and she was receptive for sure. She was receptive. Whether or not she takes in our recommendations, that's up to her and her role. But we did talk to her, and we also talked to her supervisor.
Yes.
Her supervisor was in the meeting as well, so that we could all be on the same page.
Supervisor referring to one of the staff from the mainland branch from Hawaii.
Yeah.
So when we were at Saguaro, touring with us was Tommy Johnson was there, as well as Scott Jimbo from the main branch. So we will continue to have those conversations on whether or not we should really look at what is the expectation of having a monitor there, and whether or not we should change job descriptions and require a little bit more than what we're getting at this point in time.
Yeah.
Save the money.
Sir, this is Melissa Rice. May I come off mute here and ask a question?
At this time, only commissioners are to participate. At the end of the meeting, you can ask a question.
Oh, pardon. Thank you. This is my first time. I appreciate the guidance.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Ted. That was a good. Thank you for reminding us about that.
Do you have a follow-up to ask how many?
Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy, are you on, Tommy? Or Max?
Yeah, we're here.
We just wanted to follow up with a question on how many parole violators are at Saguaro?
Now, 59,
59?
59.
59.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7. A real quick report on our visit. After leaving Arizona, we went to Texas, Fort Worth, to attend the National Association of Civilian Law Enforcement Conference. Now, the NACOL conference, and Kristen has been part of that for a while now as a member and working leader there. And it was really, if you recall, a lot of the national media with the way police have been doing, and a lot of the actions in terms of, what's the best way to explain it? The shootings that have been going on, or the beatings nationally. So when we went to this meeting, there's a strong presence of how do we control those things? How do we control law enforcement? And so it was law enforcement heavy, yeah. And there was one day specifically for correction, which I attended, and I appreciate it. But, you know, in speaking with Christian and some of the her friends that are there, and the people that I met, it's really trying to push the correctional agenda and saying, hey, this is a concern as well, yeah. That oversight of law enforcement is good, but it should also extend to corrections, yeah, and be a little bit more talked about than it was at the particular conference that we went to. So I'm going to say it like that, Kristen. And then other than that, there was a committee for corrections on the NACOL, in the NACOL organization. I don't have that listed. I think the conferences and the workshops on corrections were really panels that you learn from the other areas, what's going on. I did meet Michelle Dietrich. Dietrich. And she was dropping some of your names in this this meeting right now, and then, so I know you guys know her as well. So I was kind of honored. I was excited to meet her, as she is one of the lead people in the nation on correctional oversight.
Yes.
So I attended a workshop where there were 3 states that had what they call civilian correctional oversight, no government attachment. It was Pennsylvania, Illinois, and New York. And what I thought that was really interesting in that the Pennsylvania oversight organization was founded by Benjamin Franklin in 1789. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's only a decade after Captain Cook came, you know? And they've been in existence. I think the New York was in existence since 1850, and then the Illinois was from 1901. So there were a lot of history on how to do correctional oversight from these civilian organizations that I thought was very interesting, and how every state's going to differ based on their laws on how oversight can be done. And they had a huge conversation about privileged mail, and I remember texting Nicole. I said, hey, we got to do something about privileged mail. She said, oh, I'm already doing that. So there was a lot of things I was texting to Nicole as I was learning, and she's already telling me, "Oh, I'm already working with Tommy on that."
You call me Nicole.
Oh, Kristen, sorry. So it was very a lot of the information was positive for me. And you want to say anything?
So I was also in Fort Worth, but I did get COVID, and so I had to stay in my hotel for the entire conference. So I did not get to participate, but I did hear all about it. The one thing I do want to highlight, though, because Mark is being shy about it, I think, is that Mark was actually invited to be a panelist in a panel that was involving a gender responsive approach to corrections. When I had submitted our names, they recognized his name from the work that he's done with the juvenile girls here. And I think that that is huge, that, you know, Mark is somebody who has put Hawaii on the map for national recognition. And so that was so great that his work was recognized and he got to be a part of that panel. I'm so sad that I missed it, but I heard amazing things. And yeah.
I think and then Nicole was a candidate to be a member of the board for Nicole. Kristen was a candidate to be a member. And she did do a video, and then she did. But like I said, it's really law enforcement strong right now, and we're trying to get correctional expertise on the board itself. But she is a member of the correctional committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a great experience. There's more things. They had a panel on, and this is the last thing that we can move forward on use of force in correctional facilities. And four areas that they talked about was research done in Rikers Island on injuries to offenders because of use of force on each other as well as staff. They had another lady talked about research in the state of Maine, I believe, on suicides by correctional officers. Yeah, as it relates to their job. Yeah, and so that was of interest to me, knowing that. And my conversations with her after is really, how do we get a study like that in Hawaii concerning suicides of correctional staff? Yeah, in my career, I've known several of my fellow peers that have committed suicide as a result of our experiences working in those environments as well. And of course, there's the inmates as well. So it's really looking at how we can get those kind of research done here in Hawaii to look at how violent those environments can be for both the offenders as well as the staff who work in there. And so those were interesting conversations to have. Any questions, commissioners? Judge Town?
Guide me on this one, Mark. This number that I heard earlier, that we are overly classified in Hawaii, 80 versus 40 or 50. Kristen, what is that number? What does that mean?
What does it mean?
Why are we so high up in 80% versus 40 or 50? Is that because of what does that number mean to you?
See what you're saying. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I think that it could be a situation where the classification system, it's significantly easier to be classified higher than it is to not get infractions and move your way back down. That's what it initially says to me. So if you get an infraction, you know, you could go to a higher level, whereas if you're staying infraction free for a long period of time, that's my initial impression. But honestly, Mike, I'm not sure yet. But that is definitely something that I'll be looking into more.
I mean, Mike, the classification system is how we sort the inmates and assign them to different facilities. So it really is drives the distribution of the population. And the fact that we have empty beds in our minimum security and in our higher security settings, they're very overcrowded, is in part due to the classification system. And in the United States, usually at minimum and community, the lower levels, you have between 40 and 50% of the population. And here in Hawaii, we have less than 20%. So we have empty beds there.
Well, to me, this is really, really important. As you all know, I was on the parole board for 8 years. I visited every one of these facilities, if not monthly, every couple of months, including Saguaro. And I share the concern, as much as I like Saguaro and the people there, that we ought not to have our island folks up there. And that there's also an incentive to write people up there because it keeps them in longer, or they're people that really don't need to be up there. The other thing is there should not be this cash bail thing. To me, makes no sense either. We don't need to have so many people in custody. So when you put all that together, we're overly penalizing, categorizing, just what Martha said. And it worries the heck out of me. More than that, it just seems very wrong, and we need to attack it. I don't know what the best practice is. And
You were a
is
judge, for Christ's sake.
let me finish. Kristen, is this the kind of thing that we should be tackling? I would think so, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different issues here. So the classification issue, I mean, when you're in a higher classification, that affects your entire experience within the correction system. You don't get as many programs, you don't get as much out of cell time, you don't get as long of visits, phone calls. I mean, the list goes on. In addition to that, when you do get to go in front of the parole board, they see your classification, and there's immediate assumption that if you're in a higher classification, you're not acting right, you're not ready to come out, you're irresponsible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so if the system is set, even if it's unintentional, but if the system is set to classify people higher, that sets them up for failure. Because again, and this is pretty common across the board. This isn't just Hawaii. Because one of my pet peeves is that the higher you're classified, the less programming you get. And for me, that's never made sense. I think the higher you're classified, the more programming you need, right? In order to shift the behavior. So
I hate to say it, but obviously the concern is that we haven't embraced, if that's the right word, therapeutic, rehabilitative, transformative community justice. And I don't know how we switch that around. I take it, Kristen, that's training. And I mean, the leadership of this commission has been, I hope, transformative, but it doesn't seem to translate onto the ground. So I'm just asking you, how I don't expect an easy answer from it's a hard answer. How do we get there if that's where we want to go?
Michael, as the discussion we were doing had to do with the Nicole conference, but I'll entertain the thought that I said earlier that Christian was going to come up with a strategic plan, within the next 2 months. And when we come up with that plan, everything that you're talking about, what Martha brought up, what Ted brought up, will be mentioned in the strategic plan and the direction and how we're going to get there. Yeah. And so we really don't need to talk about it right now because it is.
Mark, I was planning on talking on classification once we talk about HCCC. So I still want to carry on the conversation on classification, but can we wait till we get to the next section?
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I lowered my hand graciously, but this is not going to go away. And if we're overly populated in all of our jails and prisons, we need to get on this yesterday. Thank you.
Well, it has always been a concern of ours, and the fact that we have an oversight coordinator now, we can move. Okay, so we're just waiting for that plan to be written, and we can move. Go ahead, Ron.
I got to jump off of my ethics class.
Okay,
and, it finished at 11:30. I'll try to jump back on if you guys are still in session.
Okay. But you're one of the most ethical people I know. Why do you have to go?
No, ethics is practice, not learning in class. So thanks. Jump off now.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, item number 8. I'll turn it back over to Kristen. Hawaii Community Correctional Center observation report.
Okay. So I should have mentioned earlier that in completing all these initial orientation visits, Commissioner Ted Sakai has gone with me for all of these, and that's been a huge honor for me to learn from him. He was a previous director twice of the Department of Public Safety. His knowledge and expertise is incredible, and so it was really a privilege to tour with him. And after we toured HCCC, I was personally surprised because I've been to nearly 50 correction facilities across country. I've never seen one in this condition ever. It was pretty terrible, to be frank. And Ted was also very surprised, which I think adds to the concern about it, because it sounds like things have just continuously gotten worse, even since he was director. And so, Ted, if it's okay with you, since you're a commissioner, did you want to start with the initial impressions, and I can kind of add to yours, or would you like me to start?
No, generally, there's several things that really struck me immediately. Is it was 8 years since I last visited the facility, and everything's pretty much the same, except everything's 8 years older. The facility was just as overcrowded. It's not only 8 years older, but because of the age, some cells were decommissioned because of failing locks. And because they were decommissioned, that really made the overcrowding even worse. Some of the things that really struck me was the number of inmates, especially women, who were housed in dry cells, rooms that were not meant to be living units, but the facility had no choice because they had to put them somewhere. The other thing that really bothered me was the fact that the people on the ground, the warden and his staff, were doing everything they could to cope with the situation, but it was all they could do, cope with the situation. There seemed to be no plan to get out of the terrible mess that they're in right now. There's a housing unit coming up. I think it was like 48 beds or something, but it's just a housing unit. The facility needs to be completely overhauled. The medical facilities are completely inadequate, and there's no plan to improve the medical facilities. There is no recreation space. There is no plan to improve the recreation space, that sort of thing. So I think this is probably the thing that caused me the most despair, because the facility always has never really been in good shape since I would say the 1970s when it first opened. But the fact that there is there's no source of hope for the people working there is what really bothered me. And this is why I think yes, they need a new facility. That's the existing the newest part of the, so it's on 30 years, and things are really falling apart. But they need a new facility. But we also have to ask the question: who's there? How many of them are from the Hilo side? How many are from the Kona side? The Kona inmates create tremendous pressure on the facility because of the transportation requirements. We need to ask, how, among those awaiting trial, how long are they there? How many of them are there simply because they are unable to post bail? The warden talked about his constant conversations with the judges, and he seemed to be frustrated with that. So there's just so much that Just as a recap, things were bad 8 years ago. I acknowledge that, but they're so much worse in almost every respect right now. So that sort of recaps my feelings, Kristen.
Yeah, and for me, coming in as kind of an outsider. For those of you who don't know me, I started 2 months ago, and I moved here from Michigan, and so I oversaw the Michigan prisons, and then eventually I went to New York City and oversaw Rikers Island. Rikers Island is notoriously known as some of the worst jails in the country. And I don't think that it would be that way if people saw HCCC. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like it. And so that's what I want to make very clear to our audience. I think the HCCC isn't in mass news and mass media because people don't know how bad the conditions are inside. I want to be very, very clear about that. So there are federal standards, and they're very specific, honestly. There are federal standards to basic minimum conditions of confinement. These federal standards were initially published in 1980, and since then, the ACA, which is the American Correctional Association, yes, the ACA has continued to kind of update and, push on these standards. And they've done that through looking at lawsuits that have occurred throughout the country. And one of my biggest concerns is that there's a lack of familiarity with those standards, not just with facility staff, not just with the warden, but also with downtown, the leaders of the public safety departments. And these standards exist for a reason. These are minimum standards for conditions of confinement. And so some of the things I was finding, Ted had mentioned the dry cells. Dry cells are cells that don't have toilets, don't have water. They're really meant for short housing. And so basically what they're meant for is if you have somebody coming into the facility and you're trying to figure out where do I need to put them, it's meant for a couple hours at most. I found that there were women who were housed in the dry cells. One of the women had said that she was in there for over a month. So that's a serious concern. In addition to that, the facility already has severe understaffing. And when you're taking in consideration these dry cells, you're putting it on the staff who then have to escort each individual person in and out to use the restroom, to bring them water, to take them out to any type of service, which I guess would be for normal cells too, but it adds a lot to the staff. And so I want to make the point that staff don't want these conditions either, right? They're working with what they have, but that doesn't make it okay. Additionally, there are padlocks on the cell doors. Padlocks are very specifically in the standards, they're illegal. They're legal to have. And the reason why that is because it takes an immense amount of time to unlock the padlock, to unlock the door, and then to get into the cell. So if you have an emergency, if you have somebody who's trying to hang themselves, somebody who's fighting an assault, anything like that, it adds a significant amount of time to be able to open that door to get to those people. That's why they're illegal. So you have malfunctioning doors that have padlocks on them. In addition to that, and I will talk about what's been fixed since this time, but if we're focusing on the initial tour, there was a corridor of a hallway where there were many cell doors, and nearly every single cell door, if not all of them, were smashed and broken, the windows, to the point where you couldn't see in. And this is important for the correction officers who are required to do tours every 40 minutes to an hour. They're required to go in, look into the cell, make sure that the people in there are breathing, that they're okay, that they don't need anything. It was not physically possible for me to be able to see into the cells, so I don't think it's physically possible for the officers who are working there. So now you have situations where officers are required to do a tour every 40 to 60 minutes. They can't see into the cell. They have padlocks on the cell. So they would have to take off the padlock to open the cell. You have 4 people in these cells that were meant for 1 to 2 people. So you have high tension. So you can see how all of this together is potentially putting staff in danger. Not to mention putting people in custody in danger as well, because you can't see them. So that was a massive concern. Another massive concern was the lack of programming and basic services. There are no in-person visits at all. Most of this is due to construction, but regardless, that's a mandated standard, a mandated service. No outdoor recreation, that's a mandated service. Some people who we spoke to said that they had no soap or hygiene products. The facility has confirmed that they do have soap and hygiene products to give out to people, but at the time when those individuals were telling me that, I did not physically see those items in their areas. Another thing is that they were saying that mail is taking over 2 weeks, that they don't have access to many uniforms. They might have access to 1, no undergarments. And what we had visually seen was that most of the uniforms were ripped, mismatched. Like, it was very clear that what they were saying had some validity to it. And again, I'll talk about what has happened since this tour, but I also really want to focus on suicide and safety watch. We know that there have been a concerning amount of suicides within the Department of Public Safety. And when Commissioner Sakai and I had toured, we had seen 2 individuals on suicide watch who were being held outside near the shipping container, the COVID container. And we made the assumption that they were on suicide watch because they're wearing smocks, and smocks are thick, loose cover that people wear, and it makes it so that they can't tear it in order to hurt themselves. So it was unclear where they were housed. And as we continued our tour, Commissioner Sakai had noticed that 2 of the males in suicide watch were waiting for the bathroom in the corridor, and each of them had went in separately. So when they're in the bathroom, the door was closed, nobody was watching them. So that was a huge problem. The shipping containers / the COVID housing, I know that I had kind of talked about this before in this meeting, but massive concern that people are being housed in there for long periods of time. This is also happening at HCCC. When we had toured, we had asked people how long they had been in there. I'm trying to take a look at my report to see. I believe that somebody had said they had been in there for over a month. There are also 3 tiered bunk beds in these cells, which I've never seen before. But they had 3 tiered bunk beds and 4 people in each of the cells. So you had the bunk beds filled and then somebody sleeping on the floor. This unit is very hot. It's outside. It does have air conditioning, as long as it's functioning and it works. But that was also another concern, is that you have to have an officer stationed at all times outside of the shipping container. So that's an additional post. You know, so I don't know. It's hard for me to figure out how often the officers were looking in and making sure that these people were okay. Recreation, we kind of covered. They're not receiving outdoor rec. They're not receiving law library and other services. There was a large area being used as housing. It's previously has been known as the fishbowl. It's a large, kind of like a recreation room is what you can picture it as. And they have people sleeping on the floor. There were 14 people in there. They're still in there, I'll be honest about that. They don't have beds. They don't have a table to write letters. They don't have a TV. They're just in there. So I did post a report about this that covers all this in detail. Again, it is on our website. I highly recommend you take a look. And in that report, I had included the federal standards because I want people to understand that this isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't a matter of my opinion, I should say. This is a matter of the federal court saying that this is what's required. And so I was just extremely concerned. I was really taken back by the conditions. I do want to talk about initial steps that were taken since this tour.
Kristen, let me just interject here to say that we picked all of this up in an afternoon. It was supposed to have, it was not an inspection or an audit. It was a simple walkthrough. So we didn't go looking for things that went wrong. If we did an inspection, we would probably find a lot of things at all of the facilities we visited, but that wasn't our purpose. It was simply to familiarize Kristen with the facilities. But HCCC was particularly egregious, so we felt compelled to move forward on these, on what we saw.
That's such a good point, Ted. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, this wasn't a situation where we looked at logbooks or cameras or did a survey or an audit of any kind. Ted's completely right. This was a basic orientation tour. And normally I wouldn't do a report like this after a tour like that, because again, that's not what this should be meant for. But I did have very, very serious concerns, especially with the lack of understanding or the lack of knowledge behind the federal standards. Some of the conversations that I had, I really had to explain, this isn't me giving an opinion. This isn't me saying as, you know, an activist or as anything like that saying, oh, this needs to be better. You know, it's what's bare minimum mandated. So yeah, that's a great point, Ted. Thank you. So since our initial tour, Ted and I had some very long talks about what to do after that tour. We were both very surprised. We decided to publish this report. The first part is my report, kind of. It's more of a narrative report so that the general public kind of understands what should be required and what was happening. And then it also includes Ted's report, which is very a matter of fact and kind of bullet points the issues. So they're both very helpful. But after we had written these reports, I also called Tommy Johnson and I told him that I'd really like to tour with him and Mick Hoffman, so that we could all strategize together after what we were seeing. And Tommy did get right on it. We toured pretty quickly after all together, and I, you know, walked through with them and we talked through all the different issues that we were seeing. So I really appreciated the opportunity to do that because, again, ultimately, the commission can recommend things left and right, but it's the Department of Public Safety who really needs to take that in and act on it. And in this situation, I did feel that they did. So when we started together.
Can I ask those of you who are on this link right now, if you could mute yourself, because we're hearing a lot of backlog and interfering with the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so we toured together on August 31st, and immediately after, Tommy actually went to the courts himself to talk to the judges and figure out how many people could be released at that point. And then has also created kind of a plan to keep the warden in constant contact with the courts and with the intake service center.
Yes.
Yeah, the intake service center to figure out, for especially the people with very low bails. We have people in there with $15 bails, $20 bails, $30 bails. And so, excuse me, and so really looking at that and highlighting them and trying to get them out. There were some bunks. This was another issue I need to bring up. There was one cell that didn't have any bunk beds. I didn't understand why. And an officer had told me that they didn't have bunk beds because they were flooding. So if they removed the bunk beds out of the cell, then their mattresses would be on the floor, and that way it would prevent them from flooding, because if they flooded, hit their mattress, and they'd be upset. You can't remove bunk beds as a punishment. That's not a privilege, it's a right to have beds. And so that is something that was immediately addressed. The bunk beds were put back in. Some of the lights in the COVID unit were out, which made it.
Kristen, I do have a question about that I was going to bring up. When they took the bunk beds away, you did ask the chief of staff why they were flooding the cells, and can you say what his response was?
Yes, I did ask the chief of security why they're flooding the cells, and the response was they were flooding the cells because they wanted recreation, and they wanted phone calls, and they wanted visits to see their family. So I directly. Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
The reason I was bringing that up on earlier, the talk on classification. So here you have inmates complaining about conditions, and they're doing it through their behavior. As a result of this rebellious behavior, they get written up for infractions, and they get reclassified and pushed up higher. And it all relates back to not having the conditions in a livable manner, so that they're not creating these infractions.
Right. So, and that was my response, because I was a little taken back. So my response to the officer at that time was, so you're telling me that they're flooding and rebelling because you're not giving them their minimum mandated standards.
Yeah.
And they're upset about it. And then the conversation kind of went on from there. But that's what I'm finding, is that for whatever reason, whether it be overcrowding, whether it be shortage of staff, whatever reason may be behind it, it doesn't negate the fact that these people aren't receiving their minimum mandated services and standards. And that is a problem, because then when people start acting out, and when people start banging on the cells or smashing the glass or doing whatever they may be doing, it appears to be the department's response to then punish that behavior, instead of taking a step back and recognizing maybe they're acting out because they're not receiving what they're entitled to receive. And so that is a conversation that, again, I'm continuing to have with staff. And keep in mind too, I mean, a part of it, this isn't me making an excuse for the department. A part of it, though, is that they just genuinely don't know. If you don't know the federal standards and you don't know what's required of you, which they should know that. These aren't new. But a lot of it was surprise to hear that, again, this is what's required. So it's difficult. I think it's difficult, because I'm talking to these staff, especially the line staff, who are just trying to do the best they can with the conditions that they have. And I say that wholeheartedly. The line staff are doing the absolute best they can with the conditions that they're working in. But it has to be.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. I can't raise my hand because I can't use this system. But all the facilities had copies of the ACA standards, and whenever they were updated, we provided the facilities with the updates. At wardens' meetings, they were discussed. It used to be that throughout the system, they understood standards. Couldn't always meet them, but they understood them.
That wasn't my, I hear you. That wasn't my impression.
Well, it's not true anymore.
Yeah, and my impression was just people were just feeling really lost.
Yeah.
And that's what really surprised me. It has to be a top to down approach. I mean, downtown has to know, the wardens have to know, the line staff have to know. Because then again, it really highlights that you can't use mandated services as a punishment. You can't take those away as a punishment. You can take away commissary, you can't take away visits. Right. Unless it's like an extreme circumstance. You could take away commissary, but you can't take away phone call. You know what I mean? It's like there's just specific standards you can't use as a punishment. So I did are these federal standards. We did have quite the long meeting with Tommy Johnson, Nick Hoffman, and the warden to try to tackle all these different issues. The issue of overcrowding, that does have to be dealt with, I think, with the judicial branch. Ultimately, the department, they can't say no to anybody. They can't say sorry, we're full, and so that is definitely a big point of mine that I will be working with the judicial branch, working with judges and prosecutors and trying to get them in these facilities, because I think it's important that if you're going to take away somebody's bail or set it to the point where you know they can't pay it and you're sending them to these facilities, I think it's absolutely vital that you understand what the facilities look like that you're sending them to.
That's right.
And so that's definitely one of my goals. I will also be conducting biweekly tours at HCCC. I was just there yesterday. And I will be publicly recording these tours and publicly recording progress made that I'm seeing. I'm really going to be focusing on quality control of the facility and operations, and so that would be things like fixing the cell doors, making sure that there aren't the padlocks on the doors, things like that, hygiene, services and programs, security, safety and sanitation, discrimination prevention. And I brought up discrimination prevention because I've noticed consistently that women in these facilities are placed in very questionable areas, whether it be the COVID pods or whether it be dry cells. It's interesting to me that it's the women specifically who are experiencing that. So I put in discrimination prevention because of that. And then also recreation. Recreation has to be outdoor. You have to experience sunlight, fresh air, and then have space to be able to exercise. And so letting people in a day room with a TV, that's not recreation. I'll also be adding an agenda item to each of the meetings so that we can talk about HCCC and the potential progress. And I'll be sharing this report with the legislature so that they can see as well. And the reason for that is because for the department to be able to fix a lot of these things like the cell doors or building a new facility or whatever it may be, they need money for that. If we're not accurately funding the Department of Public Safety, then it's difficult to put it on them to expect them to be able to make all these fixes if they don't have the money to do it. So that'll be a big thing to focus on. And then I've also requested that the department releases some type of a strategic plan that really highlights long-term fixes, particularly regarding overcrowding. And I'm happy to work with the department on this, whichever way they see fit. But ultimately, it is their responsibility. And so what I'd like to see is some type of plan to really tackle these issues. And then the commission can also add to that with the recommendation. I do see a couple hands up, so I want to pause before I talk about what's happened since then and the fixes that have come since then. So Ted.
I think Mike's hand was up first.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Mike.
No. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Couple of things, Kristen. Number one, on the exercise, I don't think there's a requirement that it has to be outdoors, but there has to be an opportunity to exercise, large motor exercise. In other words, you got to be able to really move around.
Space.
The second thing I wanted to point out is I think when you work with the judiciary, we really need to take a look at how long it takes to process inmates pending trial. I think Mike would know better than I do, but there is something called speedy trial, and I don't know if it used to be 6 months. How many people are held there for more than 6 months pending trial, and why? And I think we need to start documenting that, because part of the problem, and this came out of the original GRI study from about 10 or 12 years ago that our process for pretrial in Hawaii is very, very long as compared to other jurisdictions. And I think we need to take a look at that and see if we can help bring the pretrial population down in that way. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm talking to the judges at their request. It's actually the criminal law forum on October the 7th at 9:30. And I think Judge Del Rosario, myself, it's a cross section of prosecutors and defense counsel. And I'm not coming in as the oversight commissioner, but I'm certainly proud to tell them what I know and what I don't know. And it's a problem because of COVID, getting to court. We just had a not guilty finding, a jury trial where a gentleman had spent HCCC 6.5 years pending trial with no, you know, that's an outrage. So this is a big problem, and I agree, we've got to get with the judges, and the judges need to get inside the facility. And I appreciate what y'all are telling me today. I'm certainly going to make that clear. I think Judge Kim will be there, who's the chief judge now. I'm sorry Ron's not here today. He's doing his training, but it's coming to a head. And the other thing that's coming to a head, we're going to have a new governor. Whoever that's going to be is going to have, this is going to, it's going to be right in the front of their plate. And so I'm getting this keen sense of outrage here. And you all are very kind and nice, but my goodness gracious. Thank you.
It took me a little bit of time to have the calmness in my voice, Mike, I assure you. After I had initially toured, I was pretty upset. I'm still upset, but there has been some progress made that I do want to touch on. So in the L corridor that I told you all about that had the smashed windows you couldn't see through, every single one of those glass windows have been replaced. I was just in there yesterday. You could see into the cells very clearly. All of those are fixed. The other thing about it too is that there is ongoing construction, and this has been ongoing for a long time, well before my time. And so they had just finished 2 different units of cells, which I went in and saw. So there are people in those cells now. They're working on 2 sets of other cells that are now closed for construction, kind of doing the same thing. And then the L corridor will be on deck, basically, like that's upcoming. With the new cells, they do not have padlocks. The lock mechanism works, so there's no need for padlocks. You paint everything out, like it's nice, and as nice as a cell can be. The other things that have been adjusted, when I went through, there did appear to be a reduction in population. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I do think the department is working hard to get people out of there. There were still people in the fishbowl area. There were 14 when I went, and I believe there were 14 when we did our initial tour as well. There are still people in the COVID pod, but all of the lights were fixed. They're looking at adding a shower next to the COVID pod so that they don't have to transport people as far to get them to a shower in a different space. I have mixed feelings about that because I don't want that unit to be used as permanent housing, but at the same time, showers should be done daily, so I understand the need for that. And then I'm sure, can I see if Tommy wants to add anything? Or do you want to wait for the end?
That'll be fine.
Tommy, are you still on the line? Tommy or Matt?
Yeah, I'm here.
I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity. I feel like I'm forgetting some things. Were there Were there other things you guys wanted to add as far as what's been fixed, changed, or adjusted since that initial tour?
Well, we moved some of the offenders that qualified to Holly Dottie, and we also shipped 18 of them of the sentenced felony probationers who are going to be in for more than 90 days and working with Judge Kim, the adult probation. We did not have any court hearings coming up or pending early release. We shipped them to Halava because they are sentenced felons. And those that we shipped that are due to be released to programs will be released to programs here on Oahu. The program will pick them up. And those that, when they come near the end of their sanction period, we'll return them to the Big Island so they can have their court hearing, so they can then be reviewed. But I would like to say that the issue of the overcrowding at HCCC is not a public safety doing, as some of you indicated. You got to understand there's almost 25,000 people on probation, about 40-something hundred in custody of public safety, about 1,500 on parole. If you're looking at addressing overcrowding, guys, it has to be done in the front of the system because that is the feeder to the system. And as Taylor, as one of you guys indicated earlier, we cannot turn anybody away. We have to take everybody they send them because we don't have these authorities over 96% of the population.
I want to make a response to that. Tommy, I agree. It has to be a systems approach. But again, the commission, we have a mandate, and that is oversight of the correctional system, which is seen as the jails and prisons primarily. We are more than willing to participate with you in doing that systems review. And in fact, I really believe we need to hire outside help. So there has to be seeking the funding. There has to be hiring the consultants. We probably will have additional money at the end of this year. I mean, you know, I think that we have some money that we can contribute towards that, but PSD has to take the lead, not the commission.
Martha, I don't disagree, but every time we go to the legislature to ask for money, we don't get what we ask for just to maintain the facilities. To give you the case in point, last year, we didn't get 90% of the CIP funding we asked for. So that makes the
so you're talking the maintaining the facilities. I'm talking about the system review. I'm talking about the system review. And so to convince the legislature to start changing policy, Tommy, can I continue?
Please.
To continue to, instead of talking about fixing windows in a correctional facility, you have correctly said it is the system, looking at probation, looking at the very beginning of the system, the people who are brought in. We are willing to participate in that, but that cannot be our responsibility as a commission to do that because that is not our mandate. But we will support you and participate with you in doing that, including probably even being able to contribute some funds in hiring folks to do that system review for the state. I don't think you have the staff to do it, Tommy.
You know, that's correct.
Okay, that's my piece on that.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. So yeah, Tommy, I mean, we'll definitely work together. I mean, ultimately, our goal, in the same that your goal is to make sure that these correction facilities are meeting standards. And so anything that I can do, you know, maybe we can meet together after this to try to figure out a better plan in looking at hiring a consultant. But I do agree with Martha that it has to be a system level. And I do agree with you, Tommy, that looking at probation and parole, you know, if you're putting people on probation and parole for very long periods of time, that's giving them a lot of opportunity to fail and put them right back into the system. And so I definitely agree with that as well. One thing, Tommy, that I realized I forgot to mention was that the warden did open up another yard. And so they are giving people outdoor recreation as much as they can. I don't think they've quite hit daily for everybody, but they've created a recreation schedule to kind of switch around to try to get people out as much as they can. And when I did talk to people in custody, they did say that there was a noticeable difference since our initial tour in being able to get out more. And either if they can't get outside to the recreation area, they at least are able to get out into a day room to watch TV and play cards. So that was that was good to hear as well. But I think that's my update on HCCC.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Thank you, Christine, for that report. For 2 years, you've heard me saying we need an oversight coordinator. We need an oversight coordinator. Now that we have one,
Not for anymore.
huh? No, now that we have one, the issues are coming, and we're seeing what we know their existence, and we're bringing them to light, and we're making it publicly known, which is an important first step. Yeah. The other thing I want to recognize is that we are having and developing with Kristen a working relationship with public safety. Not only are we announcing what we're seeing and the issues that are at hand, but we're working at the same time to try and resolve them. Yeah. So where my mantra was once, wait till we get an oversight coordinator, my mantra now is the strategic plan is coming. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, I have one other comment. I have just said to Tommy that the commission probably will have excess funds that we can contribute towards this this review, the system review, and I didn't let any of the other commissioners know or even ask about that. So we have to discuss that at some point too.
It's okay, right, at this particular point in time, but that's something we can address as we look at that and review their strategic plan as well. Okay. Thank you guys for those comments, and again, thanks, Kristen, for all our hard work in putting together that report. We move on to item number 9. Is there someone in one policy actions?
Ted.
Ted, did you have something you wanted to bring up in regards to policy actions?
Yeah, basically, Mark, I had drafted something which I circulated among the commission just for informational purposes as to some things I think we as a commission need to address. And it includes the review of the entire correctional process to make sure inmates are properly classified, programmed, et cetera, et cetera. That's one. Second was to look at the pretrial process to ensure that to the extent possible, the laws related to speedy trial are adhered to and people are not detained unnecessarily long, like 6.5 years waiting for a resolution of their case. A third would be almost all the facilities are in really bad shape. HCCC really needs to be replaced. I think Maui, we need to look seriously at replacing Maui, same as OCCC. But it has to be done in the context of how does corrections fit in the entire community? What's the role of corrections? Are we there to, like I said earlier, to lock up everybody who is mentally ill or homeless that and using drugs, or is corrections there to detain and incarcerate those who are serious offenders who are likely to cause harm to the community? I think this requires not only a correction system-wide effort, but a statewide effort, including agencies like the Department of Health, the Department of Human Resources, the housing people, the Department of Labor, and the community groups from all of the islands. I think really need to be actively involved. Otherwise, we're just going to be building facilities, and 30 years from now, there'll be another commission that will be talking about the same things we're talking about, with the difference that we'll be probably hundreds of millions of dollars poorer at that point. So basically, I think the commission really needs to do these things because I think one of our mandates is not only to provide oversight, but you might the law also transferred the responsibilities of the Population Management Commission to us. So,
Right.
So it's our responsibility to set capacities, but also to recommend policies and programs that will help the department to stay within those capacities. The department cannot do it alone. they're in a really tough spot, but they need to have a much broader based effort to help resolve this huge corrections problem that we have in the state, that we've had for decades actually. So I think we need to really take a look at these broad policy issues, and I'd like to see further discussions on specific issues like this in future meetings. We've had great discussions, but we really need to start taking stands, I think.
Mhm.
I agree with you, Ted. And I don't like to sound like a broken record, but we want to make sure that we're strategic in that. Yeah. And how we're going to address it. Even if you look at the conversation from the beginning of this meeting, there's so many different issues. Yeah. It's really how do we group them so that we can have, policies that address, not just one, but multiple issues that are going on in the systems right now. And when you look at somebody like the Big Island, it's really trying to, how do we go into a county, yeah, and look at how they're trying to manage their population in terms of law violators, and then that transfer to the state, who's the only ones there that can hold them, and then how do we give them back to the same community to put them back into the community. So I agree in terms of us trying to push those policy level decision making and cooperations between the systems. Yeah, it's going to be a long road, long process, but we're right. We're going to have some discussions with Kristen and how that is to be moved and implemented. No doubt. And our role. We may not be the leader, or we may be the ones that bring them together on the same table. Yeah. I agree with
I
that.
think one of the things we can consider is doing a pre-legislation, some type of convening some type of a meeting with legislators and other policymakers from other departments to help them understand the problems at least that corrections is facing right now.
That's a great idea.
Again, the Hawaii Correctional Association, every year, we used to have our conferences the Thursday and Friday before the session began, and they used to be very well attended. And I would like to see something like that start again so that we at least have more informed legislators and legislative staff.
And I think that's a great idea, Martha. I think this year, and I always want to thank Martha in the last 2 years as being the real pusher behind our annual report. I think you might get a little break this year, Martha. but everything that we hope to uplift at those legislative hearings or presentations is really going to be presented in our annual reports for this year. Yeah.
And we have to be visible at the legislature this coming session.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ted, for bringing that up. And Martha, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Max and Tommy, for your patience. A lot of information being done right now. I'm just asking at this time on item 10, if you could, you have any update on the COVID-19 situation in our public safety facilities.
Yes, we do. So as of the 20th of September, we had 13 inmates that were positive in our facilities, 2 at KCCC and 11 at OCCC. I was just notified this morning that an additional inmate at OCCC tested positive. Many of these are detected at intake.
Okay.
As far as boosters, hospitalization and deaths, we report now. Boosters, as of the 19th of this month, these are cumulative totals. So we have 3,695 that received the full boost of the full vaccine.
Wow.
This is again cumulative. So we had 1,360 that received the first booster, 167 that received the second booster, and 35 that received the new bivalent booster. And these are just for the Hawaii facilities. Arizona, we had 949 that received full vaccination, 1,037 that received the booster. Answering your questions that was sent to us, many inmates were infected with COVID for the second time. Of those, how many were vaccinated? Department doesn't keep those statistics. According to our healthcare administrator, CDC reports that reinfections occur even within the 90-day post-infection timeframe windows. But we don't keep these statistics. I think Arizona does not keep these statistics. Are we offering the Paxlovid by Pfizer for COVID-19? Departments proactively working with Department of Health, who controls this medication, the use of COVID-19 therapeutics. Medication is in stock and available for prescription at our facility. There's another medication called, excuse me about my pronunciation, but Lagevrio, and this is used sometimes as a substitute because it has less interaction with other medications that inmates take. Arizona, if inmates are taken to the hospitals with symptoms of COVID, then they're eligible for the therapeutics at that time. Do we have any cases of monkeypox in our facilities? No, we don't. We have monkeypox vaccines available for those incarcerated. Again, the department is working with Department of Health on screening for vaccine eligibility. DOH recently revised and expanded the criteria for those who might be eligible for the vaccine. Currently finalizing the protocols right now, and we'll be working on it.
If I could just add to the vaccine issue. Any new vaccine that comes out that we provide for any new generation for the inmates, including if they get a monkeypox vaccine, we're going to continue our vaccination incentive program until the money runs out. We have a little over $300,000 left in that. So if an inmate decides, if he or she is eligible for monkeypox vaccine and Department of Health approves it and gets it, they will get the $25 incentives. So that so the federal ARPA funds run out. The ARPA funds will expire on December 31st, 2024. We suspect we'll be able to use up the funding we have now in there. We continue to give it for the inmates to get the booster shots.
Okay.
Good.
Any questions?
Commissioners, any question for public safety? It sounds like we're seeing a downtrend of all our pandemic issues within the correctional facility at this time in regards to offenders and staff. Max, would you say that's a fair statement?
The facilities kind of track the same positivity rate as the community. So as you see the community starts dropping, then the facility kind of lags behind a little bit, but there's some correlation as to the rates of positivity between the community and the facilities.
Okay. I don't have any other things for public safety in regards to item number 10. Commissioners, if I don't see any more questions, I'll move forward to item number 11. In terms of discussions of the next steps in the planning of the new Oahu Community Correctional Center, have there been any other concerns that we could bring up at this time that we have? Max, if you're still on, I just have one question. Are we anywhere near with the last report you gave in the last meeting in terms of the University of Hawaii RFP?
Yeah, it's a MOA or MOU. It's been signed. We had initial meetings. The members from the School of Architecture has met with us and DAGS as far as the scope of the project, and they plan to do their initial they're starting already on the initial research of what they're expected to be. And there will be follow-up sessions. Invites will be sent out at the appropriate time. And I believe Kristen is on the invite list.
Okay. So we're just waiting for the finalization of understanding on who and where the direction that we're going to as far as the conversations that are going to take place on the planning of for the new OCCC.
Yeah, it's going to be a phased in different phases. So there's a research and then meeting with different groups and then getting the stakeholders together to have their views of this new jail should look like.
Commissioners, any questions on what Max just shared? Okay. Hearing none. Thank you, Max, on that issue. Appreciate. Did we have any further conversations concerning the discussion on mental health programs or restrictive housings? Ted?
Oh, Ted, you're muted, I
You're
think.
on mute.
I think the problem's still there. It's as serious as it's ever been. And I think somehow we got to start taking a close look at it because it was such a passionate issue for us just a few months ago. And we cannot forget that. How the mentally ill are housed in our facilities. There's some things that I noticed in our walkthroughs that lead me to believe that we need to do a lot more work on how mentally ill in the correctional facilities are treated. As an example, at Halava, I didn't see any kind of logs or anything like that to document the observations or visits or anything for people who are considered to be mentally ill or suicidal or on suicide watch or suicide, what's the other, anyway, who need to be monitored. So anyway, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think, and I, like Mark said, welcome, Kristen, but we realize you're only one person. But this is something we really need to get back to.
Max, this is just a question real quick off the top of my head as we try to discern our mental health issues within public safety. Do you folks collect data regarding the amount or specific, I'm trying to figure out how to state this, mental health cases that come in through the jails as well as exist in the prison system that are diagnosed as mental health?
I guess it depends on what diagnosis you use, because there's a big gap of what is treatable at Department of Health versus what we receive. So, we do keep statistics, whether or not the person is referred for mental health services upon admission or if they are on the mental health caseload.
In your intake process, and I'm just going to assume I'm talking about all the jails, is there a time frame or requirement that would in initial intake for a mental health assessment?
They don't really do a full assessment on the person. What they'll do is assess whether or not the person was receiving mental health services or if the person, is a harm to himself or herself, and then referrals will be made to the mental health professionals. They're all referred to healthcare, and so intake service will do the initial screen and the follow-up screen will be done through healthcare.
So one is he may come in with knowledge that he was previously a mental health case. Two, during the intake process, we determine that there are issues. Or three, yes, if something happens while they're there, it's identified.
So if they were receiving services on the outside, then connections would be made to the provider to get diagnosis and what treatment he or she was receiving.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that, on this topic here, department's moving ahead with an RFP to get someone to come in, an outside independent body to come in to take a look at the whole process that we're doing right now. So intake, mental health treatment, and beyond, to see whether or not, improvements can be made to the system. We should be releasing our RFP, I would say, within the next month or so for this service.
Thank you, Max. I was just trying to, Ted, we talk about the jails being that intake process where identification takes place. By the time they go to Halava or Waiaba, it's already in their institutional files. So that how they move through the system is what my interest is at this time, how they're identified and what is that journey for them through the system to reentry. And I'm just wondering if we are tracking that effectively.
I think they're related, but two different issues. Number one, what you're talking about is how many of them come in with mental health issues, and how do we treat them? How do we house them? How do we program them? What kind of services we provide? The second is in all of the facilities, when we identify people who need to be isolated, very, very frequently mental illness is part of it, whether it's suicide watch or simply disciplinary segregation. And I think we really need to be assured that the policies that are in place are being carried out.
And I think a lot of the concerns is that in our antiquated jail systems, mental health housing wasn't an original goal. Yeah. And so sometimes when you don't have specific places for them, they get into these real restrictive housing type environments.
Yeah, and a large part of it is because the facilities are so inadequate.
Yeah.
For example, Halava uses part of the old high security facility. I forget, they changed the designations of all of the units, but it's the old high side.
Right.
It was designed for maximum custody inmates, but it's used for mental health housing. And it really is inappropriate. It's dark, There's no natural light, there's no program space, it's not really accessible, but that's what they have. So, but I think we really need to take a look at what the conditions are like, how the inmates who are placed in conditions like this are monitored, and how they can transition out of these conditions as soon as possible.
Okay, point well taken. That's another thing that we'll have more detailed information about in our next meetings. I think Kristen is already looking at whether or not
Question for
he should take
corrections.
the job. Go ahead.
This is Martha again. Max and Tommy, how's the relationship with the Department of Health? Like, are people who come in on a 404 that are supposed to get evaluated at state hospital, they're getting transferred in a timely manner? Are you able to transfer people who decompensate while they're in your custody?
Can we mute yourself, please?
Those are required to be transported to the Department of Health. We do, because we have to have an order to do it. Those that decompensate while they're in our custody, then we actually have to try to go to court to get the court to order the person transferred to the Department of Health. You just can't show up with the body, as you know, because they just won't take them. But our biggest concern is not the folks with seriously persistent mental illness. It's those guys coming in that fall outside of DOH's criteria, but clearly shouldn't be in the jail setting.
Yeah. Okay.
That's our biggest concern, because that takes up a good chunk of our population and a good chunk of our resources, and their conditions we've got to manage in the community. With that being said, I just want to pivot 1 second real quick. As you know, the department is going to be renamed fairly soon from the Department of Public Safety to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Law enforcement will spin off to become its own Department of Law Enforcement, which is good because the missions don't necessarily go together. This would be the right time to do that paradigm shift from a more punitive model to a more rehabilitative and treatment model across the board in corrections. And so I would hope that the commission will be our champion when we go to the legislature to ask for the program money and to ask for the staffing we need to create a more holistic environment and treatment, and a better treatment environment for the inmates. But we do need staffing, and Ted hit it right on the head. Our facilities are old and antiquated. They're not designed for the population we currently have. And the shoe was a good example of that, Ted. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, actually, Tommy, something you said, I think just emphasizes a point that the commission has been trying to make for many months now. You know, how many people come to jail who are mentally ill could really be better served in the community instead of being locked up. And I think this is a really critical area to look at before we proceed with any more planning for OCCC or any other facility. It has to go hand in hand with the planning of these facilities.
Yes.
And just to clarify, Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, even when they come in with those court orders, the 404s, isn't that really just to see if they're able to stand trial assessment?
It depends. It is to determine whether they're able to stand trial, but it also, some of them used to get ordered to the state hospital. They were that seriously ill. The 404 would be completed at the state hospital, not in corrections. Some of them, not all of them.
Okay. Any more questions, commissioners, on this subject? Thank you, Tommy and Max. We'll have these continued discussions as we move forward.
Can I do one quick point
Yes.
of clarification? I just want to do a quick clarification for the strategic plan. So there's going to be 2 strategic plans. The first one that will be coming out relatively quickly in the next month or 2, that's going to cover the first year of setting up the office and getting the office organized and under control so that the office can really do the work that needs to be done. The second strategic plan is going to be a 5-year strategic plan, and that's going to be way more in depth. And so I'm going to be working with the department, the commission, any stakeholders, community members, et cetera, to really get an idea of what are the priorities from all different areas so that we can start organizing and planning and putting it together. And a part of that strategic plan is, 1, because I want anybody who looks at our website to know exactly what we're working on and exactly what our priorities are. And 2, it's also accountability for us and for me specifically. And so I don't know, I do know. That second strategic plan is not going to be ready yet. That's going to take some time, but it is a priority of mine. And I just wanted to be transparent so that everybody, so we're all on the same page, and so we know, like, it's coming, but maybe not that fast.
A lot of it is one of the things, and then we'll go into the public comments that I learned that when we were at Nicole, and in the week that I spent with Kristen, that is getting to know her and getting to know her thought and her experience, and I'm so confident in everything that we hope to have and present at the meetings here, is really understanding that there's no other state that has the opportunity that we have. And I remember telling her in Texas, we got to start taking notes at what we're doing. Look at our system, look at the situation that we're in, how the community built a commission. We hired the oversight committee, and everything we do now is going to be a model on how oversight can be a positive influence on a correctional system and the changes that can come of it. Yeah. So we're all here on a journey that's already a decade in. Yeah. And all of that's going to be something as a model down the road. I'm very proud to be part of this right now. Yeah. And we continue. So everything has meaning. Everything has a place in where we're going to go. And so we just hope that you folks will continue to be with us and help us as we move forward in this journey. With that being said, I take some final comments on the public on the agenda and what was discussed today. Thank you. Kat? You're muted.
Thank you so much for a great meeting with terrific information. I really appreciate you reporting on your trip. And I was just curious, when you got to Saguaro, did they know you were coming?
Yes, yeah. I've been,
So
yeah.
everything was painted, all the signs were up, because I was there with the Senate Public Safety Committee in 2007, right after it opened. And we were walking through the classrooms, and I waved to some guys who were in a class, and the teacher invited me in. And I said, "Oh, how long have you been here?" And he said, "Oh, since yesterday." So that concerns me, because when they know people are coming, they paint, they put up the signs, they do all the things they should be doing. So I just wanted to know. Also, is it possible for you to put up the monitor's duties, her scope of duties on the website? Because all of us in the community believed that she was an advocate for the people inside from Hawaii. And that is apparently not what's happening. And many of the guys have told me that when they've talked to her about some things going on in the prison, she says, "I only listen to people who pay me more." So this is a problem. On the building, I really appreciate, Ted, that you said we should pause and on OCCC, and I believe that we should, because we're too focused on bricks and mortar rather than the people who will be living and working in these facilities. So it's really, really important that we think about the needs of the people in there and design that way, rather than building some big warehouse and sticking people in there, which we found out doesn't really work. Thank you. I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you, Kat. We'll look at that question about putting the job description on the website. We'll get back to you. Thank you. Any other hands you
Max.
see?
Okay. Max
Okay.
has his hand up.
Max, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a couple comments, excuse me, in reference to the policy action by the commission. You know, the department looks forward to seeing what the policy statement would be from the commission as far as addressing overcrowding. We would, you know, we've been waiting for a while, you know, finding, you know, deficiencies within the department. I think, you know, that may be some of the low hanging fruit at this point, but I think resolving the issues that, you know, that you folks saw, and I believe a lot of it is, you know, contributed by overcrowding. If we had proper space and we're not overcrowded, you know, we would not be needing to house people in areas where cells were not designed. We would have more opportunities. I'm glad you said that, you know, the facilities, you know, a new modern facility makes it more efficient. You know, these are things that, you know, department has been preaching. But I think, you know, if we plan to work together in the future, I think a strong policy statement from the commission be vital. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Melissa?
Malina. Malina?
Aloha, Melina Ku'ulukukui. This is a question about mental health services. I was trained as a psychiatric social worker, and at one time I was part of the Orange County Correctional Mental Health Services, which was a community mental health services under mental health, but in the Orange County Jail. And I am old enough to remember when Mr. Otani's predecessor successfully wrestled away the mental health services from the Department of Health, put it under the Department of Public Safety, because he believed that there were structural challenges, and I'm sure there were. But I'm wondering if perhaps now might be a time to evaluate whether mental health services within the corrections might be administered under the Department of Health, Adult Mental Health Division, rather than DPS. I mean, I think there are pros and cons to it. I think that if the Department of Health is administering those mental health services, they have a broader perspective of service delivery system. And if we're talking about perhaps serving some of our now inmates and prisoners who are in facilities, and we might look at serving them in community facilities, perhaps now might be a time to go back and reevaluate whether services should be delivered by the Department of Health.
Ted, you want to respond to that? I see you.
Ted, you're muted.
You're muted, Ted.
I just think it's a great point. I'm Molina, by the way. And I remember when it was the mental health services were transferred. I wasn't the director who did that, but I remember when it was done. But I think it
was George.
Yeah, I remember that. But I think it's something that's well worth looking at. Responsibility for mental health services, and I think if the Department of Health can look at the jails as simply part of a continuum, I think maybe we can get a better understanding of the kind of services and programs we need throughout the whole community. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you, Molina.
I also have a comment on that.
Go ahead,
This is Martha, and hello, Marlene. At the youth facility, when the youth facility was sued by the Department of Justice in 2005 over condition, at the youth facility, DOH provides the mental health services, DOE provides the educational services. It is the employees of those two agencies that brought the problems to the attention of the Department of Justice. I like the fact that an outside agency can also be helping with oversight.
Okay. Thank you, Molina, for bringing that up right now. It's something for us to consider and think about. Thank you.
Melissa. Somebody named Melissa.
Melissa?
Hi, thank you, sir. My name is Melissa Rice, and this is my first time joining, so thanks for having me. I'm here, I'm a very involved family member of an individual that's been incarcerated upwards of 30 years. He's lived stateside for the last 25 years in a variety of private facilities, currently Saguaro. You all went into great detail about some of the atrocities that are existing there in the facilities on the island, which is heart-wrenching, maddening, all of the like. But you didn't go into any detail on the kind of the takeaways or the concerns that you observed or were provided there from within Saguaro. And I'm just curious, just a matter of formality, will you be publishing those somewhere to be reviewed? I'd like to make sure that a few of the concerns I have and then the family member I support and groups of gentlemen that I support there at Saguaro, I'd like to make sure that their concerns are on that list.
Yes, everything I write up will be posted publicly. And I absolutely welcome any type of letter or information from those in custody. Tommy, do you know if there's any update on privileged mail?
I did have some discussion via email with Lisa Itamori of the AG's office, and she recommended that we consider doing so. The director and I still need to discuss if we do it, how would it be done. Our concern is not the outgoing mail, to be honest with you. All outgoing mail has to be screened no matter what. It's not read, but it has to be screened. Our concern is incoming mail. We've had over a few dozen incidents where outside folks have used actual attorney addresses and names to send in contraband to the facility. So that's our concern. And also, anything coming from the commission in would need to be not read, but it still has to be screened. We detected a large quantity of drugs, either soaked in paper or actually in thick binders sent in where people hollowed out near the top of the paper and stuck drugs in. So that's our concern, but I'll talk to you about that probably after the meeting.
Okay, I want to make sure that we have that under control before people start sending letters, because I want to make sure that they know whether it's privileged or not beforehand. Carry on. Has her hand up.
Just a real short note. When we were in Saguaro, we did or Christian did address some of the issues that we knew about prior to us going to Arizona, and spoke to the individuals involved. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ariane? Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to again emphasize for the ACLU of Hawaii, it's so important we are taking a systems approach and to involve the community, looking to the juvenile system to see the progress that has been made, and for everybody to take responsibility for their particular roles. Kuleana. I'm hearing sometimes it's overcrowding. Let's point the fingers to judiciary. But I think everybody has to take responsibility for their lane. And one thing I can say for the Department of Public Safety, yes, they don't choose who comes in their doors, but they have control in terms of classification. They have control over who gets to work furlough, who gets into extended furlough, educational furlough, the kinds of treatment people get inside, and reentry services. And with that, we may want to revisit, similar to the comments from Melina, whether or not the Department of Public Safety is best situated and has the expertise, experience to provide reentry support services. I think that is better suited in the Department of Human Services, working collaboratively with the community. There are a number of community-based reentry programs that have the capacity to serve more people, but they're underutilized. And that's in part too because the department sort of limits what they can do in terms of certain programming, or not fully contracting with them as they've done so in the past. And I think context is important. I heard, Kristen, sadly, you mentioned that from all the facilities you've been to, this is the worst. Historically, some years ago, Michelle Deitch, professor, the international expert on oversight, visited us, and she was mentored by Al Bronstein, who was the ACLU National Prison Project. And this was over 20 plus years ago, where we had a consent, essentially decree and oversight from the Department of Justice for 14 years. And he said at the time, this is in the 1990s, that Hawaii had the worst prison conditions he had ever seen in the United States. And my voice is starting to shake because it just saddens me that 30-something years later, we're still having this conversation, and knowing that some of us here have had loved ones in these jails and prisons. We have loved ones who have returned more broken when they entered the jails and prisons. We have people here, loved ones never returned home because they were murdered in our jails and prisons, either by other violence, assaults, or by their own hand, suicide, in these horrific conditions. And so what is it going to take for us to come together collaboratively and everybody take responsibility instead of pointing the fingers? And behind all of the numbers is people. And I would like to inform, just like keep pressing upon the importance of data to drive our decision making, but recognizing the people. And so I just want to highlight, when we talk about probation and parole reform, looking at the report from the department on September 12th, there were probation and parole violators, 819 people out of 4,257, which is almost 20% of the population, is back inside for probation and parole revocation, most of which are technical violations. Second, if we're looking at the front end of the system pre-trial, as of September 12th, 1,079 out of 4,257, which is approximately 25% of the entire population, is pre-trial status. And so if we look again at every single entry point and implement strategies that are proven to be effective to decarcerate, we can make it happen. But I just pray that our children, the next generations from now, are not going to be here in this meeting and basically pleading and begging for systemic changes. And so it just gives me hope that we're all here, and I believe that we can do it together.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. Next one. If I don't see anyone.
She had a comment.
I know. If I don't see anyone else on the Zoom, it's not even a Zoom, it's a Teams. At this time, we're gonna give the last comment to the floor here at where we are now to Cami.
Hi, I wanted to publicly introduce myself. I'm Cami Fairbanks. I'm studying political science and economics at BYU over on the North Shore. And I work as a research assistant for an economist on campus. And part of that entails that a lot of my research work is done on the abolition of the cash bail system here in Hawaii and back on the mainland, and also on risk-based assessment programs. So I really wanted to thank the Commission for their vigor and insight into a lot of these issues. It's been very enlightening and very uplifting to see that other people care about this a lot, especially in the state of Hawaii. I also want to thank the ACLU of Hawaii for putting this meeting out and publicizing it. Otherwise, I don't think I would have known to come here in the small little corner of Honolulu. And so I'm very grateful for that. However, I do want to say I should not be hearing about this from the ACLU. Like, I would love to see more youth interaction with this commission, because I am the same age as a lot of these offenders when they go into the system. And so youth participation and youth voices really, really matter in this, especially in solving these problems. I would really like to encourage the committee and commission to really look at risk-based assessment programs and what they can do. I know there's been a lot of talk about systemic change, and I know this commission has a lot on their mind and a lot that they're doing, and just a very broad paintbrush of what needs to be done. But I think that's one of the systemic changes that I see that could really help a lot of families here. And I really want to encourage everyone to start acting now. I know that a lot of this looks like it's going to be in the future, and we're going to keep having to push until you have funding or anything. But keep participating, keep speaking up. It's very, very encouraging to see that adults are doing this, and they really do care about the children in here, because this is a public health crisis for me. This is a mental health crisis. I have people in my family that are in the Hawaii correctional system, and I do want to applaud you guys and encourage everybody that you guys are doing the work that I wish I could contribute to at a university level. I also want to say, if there's anything you see academically that is not being addressed in any of your research, I know there's been a big push for data and data collection. If there's anything you are not seeing or you would like to see, please come and contact me. That is part of my job, is to help collect that data, and so that organizations like the ACLU can push out those reports that do help create better change. So thank you guys, and thank you for this opportunity as well.
Thank you, Cami. Thank you very much for your words. Commissioners, any last words before we end this meeting?
Okay, we have next meeting October 20th, 9 a.m.
We got our next meeting for October 29th at 9 a.m. 20th, I'm sorry, October 20th.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
And in addition to the meeting, like I said, we now have social media. If you all have any recommendations too, if you think that we should have a Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, I'm all for any recommendations. I just started with Facebook because I'm a millennial and that's what I'm most comfortable with. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is, commissioners, I did send out a potential schedule for 2023, where we will be going to the different islands to host our meetings and then tour facilities either before or after. We still have to decide about that. So please take a look. If you are comfortable with it, if you're happy with it, I'll post it up on our website so that everybody knows well beforehand when our meetings are, where they are. Yeah, and I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Once again, thank you. That was an informative 2.5 hours, and a lot of information, a lot of thought process to go and continue with. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all of you. You folks have a great day. Aloha.